Now, Britain reportedly plans to increase the number of its stockpiled nuclear warheads for the first time since the end of the Cold War. A report by The Guardian says a review of defense and foreign policy would see an increase of number of warheads, which currently stands at around 180, not around, at 180. Now, the review is set to be released next week. Last defense review in 2015 committed the UK to reducing the numbers of operationally available warheads to 120. Increase is said to be aimed at persuading the U.S. to co-fund a replacement for UK nuclear weapons, also known as a Trident nuclear program. Now, Britain has been heavily dependent on U.S. technology to operate its nuclear weapons for the past 60 years. Joining us out of Edinburgh for more on the story is John White, writer and journalist. Hello, John. Pleasure to have you back on Press Review, get your perspective, especially on this story. It's kind of it's one of these things that doesn't sit well with a lot of people on this planet. They want to be just done with nuclear proliferation. So, your thoughts on this latest development out of the UK?
Well, it was a great Irish author and playwright and satirist, Oscar Wilde, who once said that patriotism is the virtue of the vicious, and there is no more a vicious brand of patriotism than British patriotism. And in the throes of Brexit, this is a desperate attempt to shore up Britain's fading prestige on the world stage as a major power, and trying to prove to Washington that it is still part of Washington's hegemonic apparatus and is still a valued partner. It is no secret that the Biden administration looks poorly on Brexit, and this is a desperate attempt, as I say, to compensate for the ravages of Brexit. 40% less exports to the EU from the UK in January after Brexit was completed, and 29% reduction in imports from the EU to the UK. That tells its own story on the realities of Brexit. And here's another thing. Trident is a nuclear deterrent based in Scotland, in Faslane on the west coast of Scotland, and it is a hot button issue for people who support Scottish independence. The main Scottish nationalist party, the SNP, is against Trident, and so this is going to only inflame passions when it comes to the argument in favour of Scottish independence. This is British nationalism. It is failing, and it will not in any way cover for the reality of Brexit, which is a disaster.
And you think, especially with the economic impacts of Brexit so far, it's probably going to take years for the UK to make up some of the losses, actually figure out a lot of things economically with the European Union to get back on its feet. And then the pandemic, I don't understand, where's the budget coming? Billions of dollars now have to be exhausted for this. They put the Brexit to a referendum. Why not put nuclear proliferation to a referendum there?
Well, that's a very good point indeed. They've just announced 1% pay rise for NHS nurses who've been on the front lines of COVID. That's an absolute insult. And they've argued that they can't afford any more, yet they can afford the billions that will be needed to fund these extra nuclear weapons. It's an absolute disgrace. And yet Boris Johnson, who has presided over the sabotaging of the British economy re-Brexit and the highest COVID death toll in Europe, is still ahead in the polls. False consciousness is a hell of a thing.
Sure is, man. It's always a pleasure to have you on. Thank you, John, for joining us once again out of Edinburgh. Mr. John White, their writer and journalist.